It is now 6:30 p.m. and I would like to call to order the September 17th, 2018 study session of the Board of Ed Trustees of the Aldine Independent School District. Let the minutes reflect that we have a quorum with the following members present: Kim, Connie, Paul, Steve, Viola. Missing tonight is, at this point, is Rose Avalos and Patricia Bourgeois. And we're going to start the program off tonight with the Deputy Superintendent.
President Mead, Dr. Goffney, and members of the board, we have with us today, we have Dr. David Villarreal to present recommendations, benefits plan for the 18-19 school year, actually beginning the 19 school year. Dr. Villarreal?
Thank you and good evening. President Mead, Dr. Goffney, and Dr. Chapa. I wanted to start this evening's presentation by just giving a recap of our last presentation that we had in August at the August board study session. At that time, we discussed the proposed recommendations and the financial status of our benefits plans for this year and looking into next year. Last week, the Benefits Advisory Committee met and we discussed the proposed recommendations for the 2019 benefits year. And tonight, I'm going to review the financial status of the benefits plans and the 4 recommendations discussed at the Benefits Advisory Committee for the 2019 benefits year. Each of you should have a packet, and since we reviewed the majority of the financial portion at the August meeting, I wanted to direct your attention to several slides. If you could go to slide 4.
If we can have the projector. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on slide 4, we begin with our first
It's coming on.
Thank you. So slide 4, we are going to list our first recommendation. And again, it's a recommendation or a discussion that we had at the August board study session. It's to remove the Kelsey Care HMO plan from our benefits options for next year, because at this point we have 3 plans through Aetna. We have the Open Access Select Plan, we have the Memorial Hermann ACO plan, and we have the Kelsey plan. So we're looking to remove the Kelsey Care plan, which is an HMO plan. On July 1st, is that the Kelsey physicians were accepted by the Aetna network. So that means that the people that are currently going to Kelsey Care will actually be mapped over to the Open Access plan, and they'll be paying the lowest premiums of the 3 plans. They can also choose, though, to go to the Memorial Hermann ACO plan if they so choose to do. The overall increase to the plan by moving mapping the 156 employees would be approximately $393,000 to map them over to the Open Access Select Plan.
As I understand it, that's because we're losing that $450,000.
That's correct. That is correct. The second recommendation, and due to the usage of the emergency room, and it's higher than average in Aldine, is that we would like to recommend adding a separate $250 copay for ER visits to the Open Access Select Plan. So that would be in addition to the existing $250 that we have in place. And we're looking at projecting about $90,000 in savings by doing that. And
Again, just in clear language, we're talking a $500.
correct, correct. And if the person is admitted, then that extra $250 will be waived.
Okay.
And we're also doing to increase the information, we're looking at doing a micro campaign again in the fall. Another recommendation is to add Ready MD, which is a telemedicine provider. as an option, and that would help also to reduce the amount of ER visits.
Has
And
other districts used something like that? And how have we seen that it worked by adding this Ready MD?
Good question. There are 3 districts that we surveyed: Pasadena ISD, Brazoria County, and Corpus Christi ISD, and all 3 responded with very positive recommendations. Now, in saying that, they've only been using ReadyMD for about 2 years, so they haven't seen a lot in terms of financial rewards, but they said that they were very easy to work with, and employees that are using ReadyMD were very, very pleased with it. And it's a very easy service to access.
So this is probably something that we need to really stay on top of and continue to let people know that's available at all times. Just keep reminding people that it's available.
You're right, Mr. Mead, is that's going to be key. Communication is going to be key to this, because right now, people are not aware that it even is out there. Some are aware if they have spouses in other districts, or if they know of it about in other districts, but they're not necessarily aware that it's going to happen possibly for next year. So we're going to begin a campaign with ReadyMD to promote that.
Promotion on that would be good.
As an informational thing to the board, Harris Health, by statute, is required to care for the indigent. And one of those things that we will be adopting on Thursday or before the end of the year is a telemedicine component to I don't think it's ReadyMD, but some telemedicine component to fulfill our statutory obligation for care to the indigent. And again, it's been pretty well received through the industry, and so we'll have that to fall back on as well, as far as information.
We believe it has a lot of advantages in that it's $35 per visit. They are able to provide prescriptions with our employees being at work all day and then having that opportunity to visit with a physician in the evening, or really any time of the day during their conference period or during lunchtime. We believe that will be a huge support for our employees, and we believe they'll take advantage of that.
Just to piggyback on what Dr. Chapa was saying, we do think it'll impact in a positive way the attendance rate too. We talked about this in August also, about joining the Texas Education Collective, or the TEC. So far, we've already saved or earned about $2 million in savings with discounts and rebates. And with being on Tier 4 of the TEC, we're looking at saving another approximately $1 million joining the TEC.
So on the prescriptions then, where would they get their prescription? We're going to tie in with other school districts to get the volume, to cut the prices down. So where would our customers, our employees go to get their prescriptions? Would it be at some locals like Sam's or some other place that they could pick their choice, or is there a place they have to go to?
They would still be able to go to the same locations that they go now to get their prescriptions filled.
But everywhere they go would know about this? Okay.
Correct.
I just have a question about the ReadyMD. What if one of our staff members, and I know it can happen even if you go face-to-face, but what if they're misdiagnosed? Do they have to pay that copay again of $35 if they have to go back and get reevaluated?
Maybe a second way of asking that question, what if they want a second opinion?
No, I'm like, just say I call and say, my throat is really sore, and they just say, I'm gonna give you some cough medicine, but then I find out I have strep throat. That's not the same as having a flu.
Correct.
So I'm asking if I call again, I took the medicine. I'm just curious because, that can be very expensive if they don't get the diagnosis.
$35 per call, yes. Yes.
It's the same as if you go to a doctor's office. They don't always get it right.
At least they can swab and all that stuff, and before they tell you.
I know, with a kid who's had strep and been misdiagnosed and all that, you just keep going back and you're like, doctor, help me. I see what you're saying, though. Good question.
But $35 is much better than going to a doctor's office and paying whatever.
Or the emergency room.
Yeah, emergency room, yeah.
I just don't want it to keep adding up for our staff,
Right.
I think after a year, though, we will have some data.
We'll have some data and evaluate, the progress of the
Employees are
implementation.
the best
And they'll let us
feedback.
know. They will let us
the
know.
best feedback.
Oh, they will absolutely
will
let
let
us
us
know.
know.
They will.
Yeah, I'm sure.
benefits here is that if a person does have, let's say, a sore throat, and they're not sure if it's really a sore throat or a strep throat or the beginning of the flu, is that the person at Ready MD, the physician, may recommend that they go see their
It's true.
PCP.
And that's happened.
Correct, yes, correct.
For the first time, yes. Yeah.
The one recommendation or discussion that we had to do with waiving the $250 and $500 deductible for the generic prescriptions on the open access plan, is that we are removing that from our recommendations. That would have cost the district approximately $267,000. So that is not part of the recommendations that we're offering for today. So we're looking at about approximately saving, it's projected about $3 million for next year, with being at Tier 4 on the TEC. On the next slide, slide 6, I do bear good news, is that at the last session, we had talked about a deficit of approximately $2.2 million, and that was for claims all the way through the end of June. We did receive July's claims to the end of July, so it has gone down to 1.4 million rather than 2.2 million as a projected deficit. Now I do caution that each month it changes, just like from June and July, it changed significantly, about $800,000. But we still have August, September, October, November, December to go through. And typically if a person goes to a physician, let's say during the month of August, is that we'll see that in the September claims.
And what is the reason you're giving toward that reduction?
A reduced amount of claims.
It's simply not going,
I'm sorry.
simply not, our employees not going to the doctor.
Correct. Or having lower claims. So the overall rate increase is at 2.4% versus the 4.2% that we were talking about in August. There was also the question, I believe, by Dr. Garcia regarding TRS versus Aldine plans. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
How much it costs?
The difference, you were concerned about TRS, the comparison.
And Aldine plans, and that is addressed on slide 16.
They numbered?
On the
Yeah,
record.
there it is, right here.
Remember I told you to look at Springs and compare?
Heading is, how does Aldine compare to TRS? And on the right-hand side, you can see the difference between the TRS premiums as compared to Aldine premiums. So for example, under the Memorial Hermann Healthcare Plan, they would be mapped to the TRS Active Care Select Whole Health Plan, which closely resembles, as much as possible, our Memorial Hermann ACO plan. And the plan that Aldine pays would be $1.76 less per month. And for the employee and spouse, it's $87.34. We have 5 tiers or 5 levels in our plans, whereas TRS is 4. We have employee and child, and also employee and children, whereas TRS has employee and children. They don't have the employee and child level. So you can see that under the employee and children, it would cost $303 more in Aldine. The same thing goes with employee and family, $260 more. If you go down to the second table, that would closely resemble our Open Access Select Plan, and they'd be mapped over to TRS Active Care 2. And in all 4 levels, you can see the difference that Aldine's plans are cheaper, ranging anywhere from $338 to $860 to $264 to $841. So overall, Aldine's plans are cheaper in terms of premiums than TRS's plans. There was also the question regarding YMCA's, where the YMCA is located in the Houston area, and the 2 YMCA's that a majority of our employees use that utilize our YMCA benefit would be in the Woodlands as well as the Atascocita or Lake Houston area. Would be the two main ones.
We don't have, our YMCA here is YMCA without walls. We don't have a YMCA in this area. We work in the schools and other places like that for the afternoon programs, stuff like that.
Okay, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Board, questions?
So for clarification, then, the recommendation will be for approval tomorrow?
Yes, ma'am, as,
So what
as an action item.
Okay, so what is the total? Which of these slides shows us the total?
The final total would it be this slide.
Or something comparable to what we're approving tomorrow?
If you go back to slide 7.
Okay.
I'm sorry, let's go to slide 8.
This is the overall, that's the overall, the individual.
At the top.
Under the calculated rate action percentage, it represents that 2.4 increase, which used to be 4.3 last month. And then we're looking at the additional funding from Aldine to be $1.4 million at this point in time.
So that's in addition to the district contribution to the plan, the employee contribution to the plan,
Correct.
whatever plan they have. In addition to both of those combined, this would be an additional 1.4 million to the district.
Correct, it'd be the deficit, yes.
Okay.
We used to refer to that as our flexible contribution, that used to be in the 4 million, the 6 million in
Yes,
some
yes, I
cases,
remember.
and we've been able to reduce that to the 1.4
Yeah,
million.
that's great.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I think the difficult part is to try to help the employees understand us. So I agree completely with Mr. Mead that a large part of the task now will be communicating these benefits and helping the employees understand that really, comparatively speaking, when we look at other districts and other locales, we are, we're at a better place than we have been in the past, as Dr. Chapa said, but ultimately, I know that the employees would want to see the benefit of no salary increase and their ability to be able to pay their bills with the cost of living increases and all of that, and not have to have an increased cost in benefits. But it's difficult to explain, but I think we should attempt.
It is. In fact, it's easier for you to show us this, and we as a board see that we're saving money from 4 million to 1.4, but to the person that's paying
Yes.
the premium, theirs is going up, okay? We know we're saving money as a board, but theirs is going up. That's where the communication has to come in. We have to do a good job, and we can explain, the additional benefits we're getting.
Clarify
So
one.
perhaps we weren't clear.
Yes, I'm sorry, that's my fault, is that our premiums
not going
would be
up.
staying the same.
this year.
Because the premiums are staying the same, we're assuming the financial responsibility of the $1.4 million. We were very intentional about the fact that because we did not have a pay increase, we were going to make every effort not to increase the premiums for the employees. Now, there are some areas, now in the voluntary plans, now, those are voluntary plans. They could see an increase if they choose to take advantage of those plans. But in the medical plans, there is not an increase unless they go to the emergency room and it was not an emergency and they have that added $250. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm sorry, I saw the 2.4.
Yes,
but
okay,
I was
we were
looking
not
at-
clear.
okay.
We apologize, yes.
But we still have to do a good job communicating that even, to let them know that we're concerned with them. And since they don't have the salaries, so we are helping them some by doing this, like Ms. Garcia said.
We could have moved forward in making adjustments to those, but we elected to assume that financial responsibility in an effort to support our employees.
I think we've done a good job in getting the prices down, which helps the district as a whole and also helps our employees as well, not having an increase in their premiums.
And just kudos, Mr. Mead, if you'll allow me to say, to the HR department, they've been out with the BAC, DEAC, and all throughout the community and explaining this benefit. And also the fact that Aldine is taking on that additional responsibility in light of the fact that we did give raises. Because TRS, whenever there's an increase, they pass it on to their, to all of their clients throughout the state. But here, Aldine is traditionally just eating it. And so we've got to stop the bleeding at some point, but making sure we communicate to the teachers and staff.
Communication is key.
That's it.
One issue that we addressed at the DEAC as well as the BAC committee is that we talked about the issue of a lot of districts in the Houston area are with TRS, and a lot of districts did experience a pay increase. But in order to make up for that 7% TRS increase, a lot of districts chose to give the pay increases, which helped to offset it a little bit, but not entirely.
I'm so glad that we decided not to go with the other, because not only are we saving money, once you're in it, you can't get out of it.
Right.
Okay, so I'm glad you made
We're,
that decision.
we're saving money for our employees.
Yes.
Aldine is taking on
We're
the
taking on
additional
the-
expense.
we understand.
Yes, ma'am.
Want to be clear?
Real, can you quickly just inform the board who is here, what part of the team is here? Just introduce who's here with you today.
Sure. We have in Human Resources with Professional Standards, Dr. Keena Bradley. We have Maggie Parker with Gallagher. She's one of our consultants. And we have Mr. Cliff Cobb, who's with our Human Resources Department, too.
Thank you, Dr. Villarreal.
Thank you.
Appreciate your help.
You're welcome. And
Great job.
Thank you.
Great job.
That concludes this part of the presentation. President Meade.
Okay. We'll start our program with Dr. Goffney.
Mr. President, we have a couple of items. One, the approval of our, get to the right place. We have an approval of a resolution to partner with the AgriLife Extension Service. This is normal. Basically, we just appoint adjunct faculty and also allow the days that our students are participating with 4-H to be counted as extracurricular days. Are there any questions?
Board, any questions on that? 4-H?
And my next item is just concerning our upcoming PD, the TASA-TASB conference, which, from what I've heard, has had great turnout. And looking at the agenda, it's going to be some excellent speakers and opportunities for us to go to some good sessions as well as interact with our colleagues from across the state. Let me tell you, Yolanda, and this is my third district with 3 assistants who've helped board. She's amazing. She has an envelope for each of you with all of your information and itinerary, everything written out. And so she'll be handing that to you tonight, as well as following up before we leave and giving you the other information. So we're looking forward to a great time of learning. And that concludes the superintendent's reports. Mr. Meade?
Oh, boy, you don't have much going on, do you?
No, trying to balance it out. Our deputy's gonna.
Let's give our deputy superintendent a chance to
I love it. I love the next part, so looking forward to that piece.
President Meade, the school improvement board agenda item begins on page 31. Under discussion, we have the final district scorecard for 2017-18, and we will be reviewing that. And we have Katie Rohde, if you can come up, please, and Dawn Ayers, that will be reviewing the final scorecard for the board. Do you have the PowerPoint, or are you just going to go through? Okay.
33.
33.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, President Meade, Dr. Goffney, members of the board. You should have uploaded a copy of the scorecard, the final scorecard. This is a scorecard that has,
Okay, not a hard copy, okay.
yeah, uploaded. This scorecard, most of this information has been shared with you quarterly throughout the 17-18 school year. You'll notice that the goals will stay the same for 18-19, those being student achievement, safe and secure learning environment, student, staff, parent, and community engagement and satisfaction, fiscal solvency, and district operations and assets. I'm going to let Katie talk about some of the highlights.
Okay. In the quarter four, which also is the end of year for 17-18, this is a culmination of all of the 5 goals and the strategies from last year. On the right-hand side, when you do look at this report, it will show whether or not we met the target that was set out from the beginning of the year. So it includes information regarding our STAR and end-of-course assessments, whether there was growth or not in each of the content areas. Also information about our college, career, and military readiness, which is something that we are going to be looking at very closely for this year. And then just all other information regarding the goals that are there. I do want to share that we are in the process of evaluating the current scorecard to make the data more user-friendly to you all and to the stakeholders. We hope to share the updated document with you in the coming months. Are there any questions regarding the 2017-18 final scorecard?
Again, for sake of clarification,
Yes.
I'm just simply looking at our targets, and then over to the right, it says, did we, yes or no's?
That's correct.
Okay. Do we reevaluate our targets, or do we work hard at achieving? Thank you. Right, you got it.
You want to talk about that?
So I would tell you it's both. So if the state changes its expectations in any category, of course, we're going to first reevaluate what we currently have and make sure we're in compliance with whatever statute is. And then in addition to that, we're constantly looking at our targets because we don't want to lower targets, if you will, right? We want to work harder to meet those targets. So I would say it's a combination of both.
I just want to see yeses across the board. That's, and there's a couple of ways of doing it, and I just wanted clarification on that.
Yeah, I just think that another important point to look at is that if we didn't meet the target, that at least the last column indicates whether it improved or remained the same. Of course, we don't want it to remain the same, but it doesn't necessarily tell us unless we dig a little deeper the level of improvement. So it's important sometimes for us to look at the no's that were improved and that the improvement is substantial, I would think.
That's a very good point. Looking at the progress and how much progress that was made. And that's what we're telling teachers and leaders, that we don't want to make excuses. We want to make progress, but we want to be able to speak to that progress and not just the fact that we made it. And like you said, it wasn't substantial.
Right.
And I totally agree with Dr. Garcia, because playing with words and playing with stats and something like that, saying that we're at the same level we were last year, but we're not meeting target, that's kind of mixed message. It can be mixed messages, and I want it clear. I want it clear.
And I will tell you that was one of the conversations we all had, which is why we're in the process of reevaluating this so that when we look at it, we know explicitly what it's saying. Yes. Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ladies. They've been working really hard, and you'll be hearing about our report, my transition report, as well as some of the things that they've been doing, meeting with our teams and staff.
I think we'll be able to understand this a little bit better, to ask the type of questions that we've been asking,
Next, we have our
Yes, President Mead, my next board agenda is for operations, and that is located on page 51. Under the consent agenda item, I will refer you to page 52. And we have for approval of the competitive bid for Nimitz Senior High School, Odom Elementary School, and Teague Middle School repairs. And that is a competitive bid. And we are looking for, to complete some restroom repairs, LED lighting upgrades, painting, ceiling tile, and grid replacements, and mechanical and roof repairs and other replacements. And we are looking to make a recommendation for the vendor e-contractors for the proposed amount. Are there any questions regarding that bid?
Only other thing I want to say on that one is that at the county, we've run into this type of problem where we've had the low bidder, and then we've gone in and they wanted to change some things, and we've actually in some litigation right now. Right, and I just want to make sure that when we are vetting these people, they can do the work.
They understand that.
They understand and they can do the work.
If I may speak, yes, we do consider that. We don't just always go with the low bidder. We vet the contractors. Excuse me. E-Contractors has done work with us before. We are familiar with that contractor. They're working with us right now with the T buildings. It's one of our projects, excuse me.
No, understood, and you told us that before. I just know what we're going through at my real job. And it's quite a problem.
Yeah, because it's all at a standstill until it's all resolved.
Experienced, nothing ever always goes perfect, and so we've experienced some things also, but we are looking to move forward, and we've been working with them, so unless there's other questions, the second.
And we have had some problems on some contracts where at the end of the contract, they didn't do everything they were supposed to do, and we had to go back. There was some litigation or something in between, so I guess it could happen to anybody, but you just have to, if you have some track record with people, then that really helps an awful lot if you have the track record.
Relationship with them.
You know what I'm talking about, Patrick.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, I think it was this building.
We were just
We'll reserve this conversation.
glances there.
The next item is, the second consent agenda item is approval of a competitive bid for the demolition of Old Francis Elementary School and Old Johnson Elementary School. Are there any questions regarding that competitive bid?
Not the bid, I do have a question, and the superintendent's already told me.
Yes, yes, sir.
Before we demolish these two schools that's been here for many years, people have came to me that went to these schools, and they would like an opportunity to walk back through these schools, and the superintendent's already told us that they'd make plans where they could somehow do that, and then I guess if we demolish it, if they want a brick, we can figure a way to get them a brick later on, but.
Able, we'll figure it out, right? You're making note, we got it.
But if we can be sure they're gonna go through it, then, okay.
Are you going to communicate that to them? That they can go and.
Aldine website?
Website, social media, and those students who are at those campuses.
People that ask me, I can tell them, I can guarantee it'll go on their website, okay, or on their Facebook, whatever kind they have.
Yes, sir. Great idea.
And Patrick, do we have experience with ARR?
What page was that, Dr. Chapel?
Page 53?
Now, that contractor, we do not have personal experience with them, but we did vet them out, and we got a lot of good reviews from them, from other school districts around, so we don't anticipate to have a problem with this contractor.
Any other questions?
Board? No questions?
The rest of the agenda items under discussion are the standard board reports. Are there any other questions regarding those reports?
Since school just started, we're gonna have Patrick do one more on bond update. It's just kind of.
Yes. So we've gone through 1 month of usage of the new buildings, and so naturally, there were some issues in the buildings that were addressed, whether it be air conditioning, the PA systems not performing and getting us back online, the bell system, so restrooms backing up, so those kind of things that we discovered and corrected along the way, but at this point, things seem to be going well with our new schools. So we also have repairs that have gone on with, and renovations, Carver, Aldine Senior, MacArthur Senior. Those seem to be going well as well through the first month of school usage. And with the repair side, just going through the building with our normal repairs, the mechanical system, roofing systems and things. So at this point, I think things are going well.
How about the marquees?
Okay, yes, the marquees, they were planned, many of them to be installed this weekend, but because of the rain, that didn't happen. Meade was one of those to be done yesterday because of the wetness and getting out there. That one was not done. And so, but yes, we're looking toward the end of this week to have them installed. Many have the poles up already, prepared to come and set the actual marquee, yes.
So we should have them before the dedications as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
You actually have 3 that are completed, you have 2 that are waiting on approvals, and
Yeah.
3 that will be completed by the end of this month.
Doing a good job, Patrick.
Well, thank you.
Excellent job.
Thank you.
If there are no more questions regarding the operations agenda, then we will move on to the HR agenda, and that is located on page 75. May I proceed? The HR agenda begins on page 75. The first being, I do need to advise the board that on the consent agenda, item number 1 was removed, was not posted, and we can discuss that further in executive session. Item number 2 is the approval of the education affiliation agreement, and that is with Lone Star. Lone Star would like to enter into an agreement with the district. They allow their students an opportunity to conduct 32 observation hours, and they would like to complete that opportunity in the district, and we'd like to work with them. And so with your consent, we'd like to proceed with the agreement with Lone Star. Are there any questions?
Is there any financials involved in that?
No, sir, there's not. This is actually the first time that they've requested that from us. We usually have universities that come in and complete their observation hours, but I believe this may be a new process, but we do want to take advantage of that because in the hopes that they come back and complete their student teaching with us. The second approval under the consent agenda item is located on page 80, and that is an agreement with Teach for Houston. We would like to enter into an agreement with them, and this is an initiative that aims to really help with the promotion of the teaching profession. They work in collaboration with Good Reason Houston, and we are hoping that they bring an awareness of the teaching profession in various forms. So they use different events and media resources, and we really look at looking at digital recruiting platforms and are really excited about the opportunity to get our name out there. They are working with various districts and are looking forward to the possibilities of working with the organization. So would like your consent to move forward with this agreement.
Would this be, some of these things that they're going to do, the television, radio, billboards, and digital, would that be within our district? They would do some of these things? I mean,
They will. They'll be very strategic in having, now they will not all be strategically for Aldine, but they will be promoting the teaching profession. They will be promoting the Teach for Houston. When you go to the website, then all the districts will be there and we will be promoted that way. So we're looking forward to see what happens with that and getting a higher quality teacher pool.
well, my next question is not on that particular one, but are we still doing the signs in the valley? where we
Yes,
promote
sir, we
Aldine?
are.
We still doing that?
Yes, sir.
And this is what, in partnership with Good Reason Houston, so there are two, there's several, but Teach for Houston is one. The pre-K that you've heard from Dr. Gomez is another initiative. Another one's gonna be College Access, in which we're gonna get all of our students to apply for FAFSA. So there are 3 or 4 goals that they've set. And so this is the second one that they're rolling out, and we're honored to be at the table because
Yes,
it's a
we
pretty
are.
powerful
Really
table.
excited about it.
And no funding from us. They're gonna do the work, we just partner.
An easy way to think about that is we get an indirect benefit from it.
Direct in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, because it says in which Aldine would benefit. And again, on Mr. Mead's question, it isn't anything directly always.
It won't say Aldine, but it'll be Teach for Houston with Aldine listed when they go
affects
to
Aldine.
class, which does impact Aldine.
Right.
And leveraging resources from multiple districts as opposed to utilizing
Right.
resources that we don't have.
And so we've had a lot of conversation about making sure that as they're marketing, we're always at a bit of a disadvantage because we are not in Aldine, Texas, and making sure that as we're looking at marketing all the districts, that you're not favoring one as opposed to the other. And so have been very, very thoughtful about how that's going to help support all the districts as opposed to just one. So.
And that is a disadvantage. We're in the Houston Metroplex, so anytime anybody says Houston in schools, there are a lot of us are just not even considered, even though we are. Houston gets it.
Houston ISD, no, we're not Houston
We
ISD.
wound up with them. And I might add, while we're talking, on the mill route where the new Lone Star College is going to be, there is metal coming up from the ground now. there's framework coming up, so they are in the process of building that college right now.
Great fertilizer,
Something like that.
great fertilizer.
It's working, so hopefully by 2019, we'll have another Victory Early College.
Rose Avalos.
Yeah,
Rose.
well, I meant that in saying what we have Victory Early over there. It'll be Rose Avalos.
Early college.
Yeah, early college, yeah.
Everything.
Okay.
Next.
Okay, the action item is what Dr. Villarreal just went over, and that'll be for your approval tomorrow, and that is the approval of the final recommendation for the health benefits. Under discussion, we have the 4 regular monthly reports, the monthly human resources personnel report, the vacancy list, the approved staff assignments. We will have 2 staff assignments for your review tomorrow, and they're actually staff assignments that were assigned in June that we missed. Thank you, Dr. Tomey, and that will be recognized tomorrow. And we have the monthly personnel assignment recommendations. Are there any questions regarding those 4 items, standard reports?
Say, Dr. Chapa, but can you tell me how many teachers we're short right now?
There were 109 listed for the board, and there were 100 listed. There's currently 109. We did had to add an extra 9 based on our enrollment.
And it's tougher and tougher to get teachers now that everyone has jobs.
Sir, it is. Yes, sir. It is. But we do have, I believe it's 83 student teachers that will be great, excellent candidates for consideration as soon as they complete their student teaching experience this fall. So we will not be in a rush. Line item number 5, which is the invest update, can be located on page 99. And just wanted to share with the board that after careful consideration, we have worked collaboratively with the high school and middle school principals and Ms. Holt and Dr. Davis. We had brought to the board meeting in July just to share with you that we had made a recommendation to change all skills specialists for Part A of Invest, teacher practice, to make them instructional. And that had been changed for those 2 levels to instructional. And we wanted to revert back to what they were last year, which is non-instructional. Those 2 levels will be working solely with teachers, and so it did not make sense at that point to have them in as instructional. All the changes were made at the beginning of the school year, and so and that had been communicated with them at that time. So we wanted to make sure and share that with you. Finally, we wanted to, this part of the board agenda is just to remind you that we have the student-teacher board dinner in October. And then I'm going to refer you to the,
I'm sorry, but what date would that be?
that is October the, let me see, I have it here. It is October the 15th. And we will get started at 4:45 so that we're able to complete our dinner and then drive back over here and have enough time for travel.
Rush like crazy.
If I can refer you to the addendum area on page 358, specifically the human capital report that's located on page 359. The report was included there for your review. We did decrease the number of employees that left the district. We had 14.68%. I can't tell you how pleased I was that 14%. This is the first year that I think that I was pleased. I was really wanting to make sure that we met that managed attrition target that we were hoping for, that 10% that Dr. Alfred Stevens and I were projecting. So we were able to accommodate all of our employees that chose to stay in the district. So we're very happy about that.
Wonderful.
Are there any questions regarding the report?
Board?
No, the only question that I had were there were very large percentages of turnover in my mind. I was trying to reconcile the fact that so many of those were because of the change in the reconfiguration levels.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
where you had, the changes in the elementary schools or the middle schools. I mean, the percentages were above 20% in the change of the teachers. And so I'm assuming that that was the case for many of them, but for those that had the consistently high rates, am I looking at a different report?
So, Dr. Garcia, we had historically, if you're looking at the page where it has all of the list of all the campuses and the turnover rates, and I'm having trouble with my computer, so I can't tell you the exact page, but it's probably the second or third page right after that. And it lists, we would usually highlight anyone that was above the district average, and we elected not to do that this time. And we thought that it was probably in our best interest not to do that, because even though we did not take into account anyone that we chose to move, if someone wanted to go back to be with their principal, we did not believe that it was the fault of the existing principal to hold them accountable. So it's reflected there, but because there was so much change that took place this year, we believe that we did not want to have that reflected and hold them accountable
Well, and
for
that's
that.
what I
There
was-
was just so much change. We
And that's what I was
collected the data, we have it there, but we did not highlight anyone because it's just data, and we'll move forward and we'll see what transpires the following year.
Yeah.
I think that's the fair thing to do.
Right, Rex, absolutely, I agree with you. And I think that one of the positive things in the report was that there was a larger number of teachers who left the district who scored ineffective or needs improvement than there were those that were highly effective.
We
So I
started
thought-
collecting that data differently, because before, we would just take it as a total sum, and then did the math that way. And so as we started looking in terms of relative to the number of ineffective and needs improvement teachers, we found that we had a higher percentage that left the district that fell into that group. And so we believe that we have better data looking at it that way, as opposed, because consequently, we have a larger number of teachers that are effective, which was
Yes, yes,
skewing
yes.
the data.
Yeah, that was a positive.
Yeah.
That was very positive.
Correct.
Way we can use that, and it's going to sound horrible, for screening purposes or in extending contracts or something, when we have evaluated a teacher as not effective. I mean, we're very lucky that those are the people who decided to exit, and we can say maybe because we raised our standards and they didn't want to get caught in that net,
The changes.
or something like that. But we would like to have everybody effective, highly effective. And I just wonder, is there any legal way, or if there's anything that we can use this data to, not to say encourage, or we want to bring people up.
So here's what I'm really excited about, and that's the fact that the data that you're looking at now is Part A, which is basically on teacher observation. This year, we are moving forward with having Part B, which is the student growth piece for accountability purposes, which to me, you're using now multiple measures to make determinations on teacher effectiveness. And so as you're looking at multiple measures, then you have the opportunity to make decisions on teacher effectiveness. And as part of our process, we should be having interventions soon. So we have already had conversations with our principals indicating if you already know who is struggling, you already should have interventions and start that level of support early, which is the intervention support plan, which is a support, and that's what it is. The ISP is a support plan because our whole objective is to help improve teacher practice. That's what it is. And so as we're helping to support individuals, we start early. And so the data should be used, and that's the direction that we take. We should be looking at the data earlier, intervening earlier, so we can be impactful a lot sooner.
The difference is subjective versus objective data.
Correct.
Okay.
So now you have a combination of the two.
Question. When you, and I don't know, I know you're saying early, how early? And then once you do identify the teachers, how receptive are they? Is it a voluntary thing for them, or is it a mandatory? How do you bring that about, the two?
So there are specific triggers, what we call triggers, that mandate a support plan. Now, anyone can be placed on a support plan if they want any type of intervention and levels of support, but there are specific requirements or that mandate an automatic level of support. Correct.
And principals can also, at this time of year, before we start the actual appraisal process, which began last Monday, they are doing walkthroughs. And the triggers are triggered from the formal system, but if they see a pattern of practice that is concerning, they can use that pattern to go ahead and start an ISP on a teacher. And so it can start as early as the second week of school if they've had the walkthroughs in place. And each of the plans have outcomes. So the plan is done collaboratively, the support is done collaboratively, and the outcomes are determined collaboratively. And if the teachers do not meet those outcomes, then the plans continue. And then there's another layer after the ISP. It goes to PGP, which is a more stringent plan. And if those outcomes aren't met through the duration of that plan, that's when we have talks about do you need to continue in Aldine? And those happen yearly.
I think it's a matter of building trust and our form of communication, knowing that we are really a team and a partnership, and the objective is to help elevate your practice.
And they must now also be aware of the expectations that are here.
Dr. Chapa, one thing just sticks out to me on page 361. I'm just wondering when I'm seeing it, Garcia Lisa, 27 and 18%. 363. I'm sorry, 363. It just stands out. Why?
353?
363, I'm sorry.
Percent.
It just sticks out. I just wonder why, that's a pre-K.
So perhaps what may have happened is that we may have moved some of the teachers out into another setting, and they may have moved back, or we may have moved teachers in and they may have moved out. It just depends, because we had so many teacher moves, Mr. Mead, that afterwards, after the dust settled and openings started to happen, teachers may have shifted into different areas. And so, I'm sorry. Yeah, a principal moved to a new campus, which may have created different moves. That's why I believe that we need to be very careful in looking at the data and drawing conclusions because of all the moves that took place this year. Yeah, this year was a
I
very,
remember now, I see some others, 30% and 29%, okay.
And that was my same concern. When I look at the high schools, because I know it wasn't the same type of changes in the high schools as in the elementary campus. So when I take a look at Aldine Senior, I'm looking at 22. And I'm looking at regular transfers were 13. So when you say regular transfer, that was someone that requested to move somewhere else?
yes, ma'am.
And the 22 was right here.
Go
Somebody,
up, slow, let me see what the 22 is 22. They resigned from the district, correct.
and so my question is, because I get a lot of questions about that, do we actually read the exit survey? Like when they get ready to leave, they decided to leave the district?
That's a great question. We actually we implemented an online exit survey. And when I first came into the department, it was extremely difficult. I can honestly say that I didn't even get a handful of exit survey data. And since we have implemented the electronic survey, so when someone completes the resignation form, they automatically have the opportunity, because you can't mandate it, they have the opportunity to complete the exit form, right? We have been able to obtain so much data. We compile that data at the beginning of the year, and then we share that with the school assistant superintendents to look for any type of trends. Are there any concerns? And then, I don't know if y'all want to share what y'all do with that data.
It's extremely valuable
It
data.
is.
And we
It
sit
is.
with each principal individually, particularly where we have higher percentages, and there are a few higher percentages at the high school level. And where we see a pattern, if it is a singular year, it takes a pattern of at least 2 years. Then when as we spoke to support plans for teachers, there's similar plans when we have turnover to this extent in our schools. We really take it very seriously, the climate of the campuses, the support that teachers are provided.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Because I was concerned, some people were just asking me to make sure that someone read those exit surveys, because they wanted to really have the opportunity to get some things out,
Right.
being honest. And I was like, yeah, we need honest feedback. Yes, we need that.
We do, and not only is it's extremely valuable for the principal, of course, but it's extremely valuable for us in terms of the type of coaching that we provide for the principals. Gives us an insight to some of the concerns that are happening on the campus.
Sir. And I'm talking about true feedback, not someone just being a disgruntled employee. I'm not talking
Well-
about that feedback.
Exactly.
I'm talking about feedback that people love the district, they really wanted it to prosper, and it just couldn't happen for them.
True.
Yes.
And there's some that are disgruntled, and
Yes.
that's very
I
valuable
know.
also. And again, when we see a pattern of that, when there's multiple
Yes.
situations like that.
Absolutely.
But you can read between the lines. on
Yes, you
that one.
can, yes. Yeah.
That's good to know.
Okay, then Dr.
Mr.
Tamika
Mead,
Alfred Stevens, are you ready?
It's my turn. Good evening, President Meade, Dr. Goffney, Dr. Chapa, and members of the board. My agenda begins on page 101. And the first item on the consent agenda for me is the standard ratification of the check register. And then the next item are the bids for this month. As you can see, there are 3 bids that we are asking for approval of. That's the basketball supplies and equipment, the soccer supplies and equipment, and then the Chromebook and Chrome carts. Are there any questions about any of the vendors that are being recommended for approval on any of those bids?
I'm going to look at the page I looked at, because I saw some of the bids, I saw several of them where there was, 2 of them got it, 2 of them got it, 2 of them got it, the bid. So let me see if I can find it. I'm going to look on page 161 and see where I made a note. I don't know if that's what it was.
Page
I'm
161?
just looking to see if that's one of my notes I made, but let me just see if that's it.
Okay. On page 161, we've actually only awarded a single company.
I'm going to run down the list, see if I can find it. But
While he's looking, let me ask a question. Mine is on the Chromebooks.
The Chromebooks, okay?
Yes, so on page 196.
Okay,
I was just curious to see why we had, if you look at the descriptions up at the top,
okay,
11-inch touchscreen, flip screen Chromebooks,
uh-huh,
recommended to be awarded to CDWG.
right,
In the next batch, we have the same description,
right,
11-inch touchscreen, flip screen Chromebooks.
right. It's just a
recommended-
different model. Okay, so
Oh,
if,
is it a model? Is it a different model?
yes, so on the first group where you see the 11-inch touchscreen Chromebooks Acer,
Okay,
so that's a brand, right? And you see that model number, and that is currently the existing technology that we have. But as you know, technology evolves and upgrades quite frequently. And so if you look at the second section where you see the 11-inch touchscreen Chromebooks equivalent, well, the HP Chromebook is a newer design. It's a newer model. But because some of our campuses already have that Acer, we still want that to make that available. So if a teacher already has 15 and they want 5 more to keep all of it the same, then they still have the opportunity to do that. But if a campus or a teacher or a classroom is just starting to use the Chromebooks in the room or what have you, and they want to have access to the most current model, and that's why you see that HP brand there.
okay, well, that explains, because I was going to ask, well, why in the world don't we just go with the second RTI? But if there's a difference in the model.
There's a difference in the
Okay, all
model
right,
and the
okay.
functionality of the
Okay,
model.
I understand now.
Mr. Mead, did you have a question?
evidently, I can't find it, so it must not have been that important. But It just seemed like they were someplace in there where I saw with giving bids to two different people in the, well, the same category, and I can't find where I wrote it down at. So.
Okay, well, if you find it, let me know. But I wanted to ask if you noticed that Pasadena is being awarded.
So we let them have it this time?
Yes,
were
so
low bid.
we met with them, we went back and met with them to talk about our expectations and being able to meet the demand if you are the awarded vendor. And so we're giving them an opportunity for the third time for them to display that they can, in fact, meet their end of the deal.
There are a limited amount of times that you will deliver.
It's usually an out, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, 3 strikes.
Yeah.
Also, under the bids, we have the approval of bid contract renewals for our fundraiser vendors and also for the miscellaneous items. So all of those are the bids for this month. Are there any questions about any of the other bids? Okay, if not at this time, I'm going to move forward to page 211.
Can I go to 210 first?
Yes, sir,
I
absolutely.
don't know why I'm numbered it. Let me look at 210 because I wrote it down for some
Okay.
reason.
And that's a renewal, uh-huh.
Let me get there a little quicker.
Give a date.
Page
It seems like it was, maybe there twice. Let's see, RTI.
Riverside Technologies, those laptops.
Go ahead.
Okay. It'll come to you in a second. On page 211, the next item on on the consent agenda is this month's budget amendment. And as you can see here, I think Dr. Chapa spoke to it a little bit earlier. The biggest piece of the movement for the budget amendment for this month is reflective of the fact that our skills specialists, the job description has been changed. And instead of just working with classroom teachers, now they are working with kids again. And so the budget for those positions were actually in function 13. So we are reducing that budget in function 13 and moving the bulk of that up to function 11, as you can see there, so that those positions are coded correctly in our system. So that's the biggest piece of the budget amendment for this month. And of course, as departments and campuses want to revise or restructure their budgets, then they submit those requests to us and we bring them to you on a monthly basis. So there are some small adjustments because of that, but the bulk of it is a payroll piece whereby the budget for the skills specialist was in function 13 and it needs to be allocated to function 11.
I just have a clarifying question.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Chapa then, so the skills specialists that we looked at a while ago under your section, are they still, I mean, they're moving primarily to working with students, but are they
Students and
still
teachers.
doing some teacher professional development?
So in elementary, they will be doing both teacher and students.
Okay.
That's the change from last year. From, in middle school and high school, they're going to stay the same as last year. They're going to work only with teachers.
I see. So it could have been a larger amount or a smaller amount that we're moving from function 13, curriculum development and in-service. But with the reduction of the work that the elementary skills specialists are doing with the elementary level, that's the amount needed?
Yes.
To move?
Yes, I'm pretty
Okay.
certain of that. That's
Okay.
why we're moving it up to function 11. So the question is, when you're working with students and teachers,
Right.
the most appropriate coding is with
Instruction.
kids, is
Okay.
instruction. So
Okay.
that's why it's under 11.
Okay.
If you're just doing staff development, then you're strictly a 13. So you're not a function 11 at all.
Yeah,
So we're reallocating some of that budget for those positions that are working with kiddos as well to function 11.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
The elementary principals more flexibility. Since we reduced their staff at the elementary schools, it allows them more flexibility to meet the needs of their campuses. So if they need them to pull students at any time of the year, if they need to have them work with students, it allows them that flexibility to do what's best for their campus.
So is it about a fourth professional development and 3/4 instruction? Or
I would,
what is it? What
defer
is it?
that
Or
to
does
their-
it vary by building
I don't
according to
think
need?
that it-
I think it varies
I'd
by
say- I'd
building
say it
based
varies
on
by
the
building.
needs.
Based
by
on the
need.
need of the campus.
Okay.
And I think it could vary by day.
Okay.
It's, their work is primarily with intervention of students, pulling groups, going into class, model, team teaching, and so on.
And I like the fact that the skill specialists are working with students, that keep them knowing what's going on. So what's the rationale behind middle school skill specialists and high school skill specialists not working with the children? Because I think that's a great idea.
The rationale is the need to really focus on building teacher capacity. There is some flexibility at the middle and high school level. However, we didn't want to make it an expectation for all of them to do that. Many of them do have teachers teaching skill specialists teaching classes. Many of them are doing intervention groups, but there are also a few that are still focused on the teacher coaching, the PLC support, progress monitoring, pulling data, and monitoring student progress.
And the campuses at those secondary levels are still utilizing some of their supplemental funding, their Title I funds, their state compensatory education funds to add additional staff to support kids in the classroom as well as interventionists and things of that nature.
Right. And the skill specialist, if they do have an interventionist, the skill specialist is working closely with that interventionist to make sure that they're reviewing data collectively and that the needs are being met appropriately.
However, last year we had discussions about skill specialists, and we had some conversations that some of them may or may have not been doing their job. So now we're saying that they're solely responsible for teachers.
So,
Dr. Booker, on the middle school, that it has not changed. They're doing this year exactly what they did last year and the year before. But also you have to keep in mind with this year we added a 6th grade.
Yes, ma'am.
Which now, if you're going through planning, that's 3 hours a day where they're tied up in planning, which is one of the most important things they do. They have to be there, but that's still an additional hour out of their day. And then with the change of teachers that we have, we really need that support to work with teachers. So we've really been pushing and promoting them to provide that support for teachers.
And I love it, but my problem is, Ms. Holt, is that skill specialist, I'm just going back from feedback was given to me. If that skill specialist is not providing the support for the teachers, adding 6th grade teachers is gonna make it worse. So now you didn't do what you were supposed to be doing with 7th and 8th grade teachers, now you have some 6th grade teachers.
That's a monitoring problem.
Yes.
That's a monitoring problem.
And that's my next question.
And that should be being taken care of.
and I think in many regards it was taken care of. So the skill specialists, where we have them focused primarily on coaching teachers and facilitating professional collaboration, those are the people that are doing the right work, that we are monitoring. We have assistant principals that are assigned to each content area in both middle school and in high school that are working closely with those skill specialists. And we have made moves where they weren't the right fit.
Okay.
And I do view this position as a critical tipping point position in making sure, in helping our teachers build their capacity so that they're doing the right work.
But are we putting the correct the administrator with the correct skill specialist? Because if they don't have background in that content, I still see a problem with that.
Well, sometimes what we look at is we don't always have a content match at high school. It just doesn't work that way. So we really focus on making sure we have the right processes in place, that we've got the right monitoring of the right collection of data, the right monitoring of that student progress, and that we have the right interventions in place, and that instruction is matching student needs. So how do we monitor that? Well, we must see student achievement results progressing at the right levels. And there's a lot that we can correlate with that data to effectiveness of the work.
We're really working with middle school assistant principals on just good instruction. If I know math, great. If I know reading, great. But I should know good instruction, regardless of the subject. And so we're really doing a lot of staff development with them and working with them, and a lot of monitoring and tracking to make sure that we're getting where we need to be.
And I never thought that Aldine is one of the districts that offer enough PD. They have never had that problem. It's what you do with the PD after we give it to you. It's never been a problem, a deficit with, I mean, You
Well-
can get on there now and find something you need. But
Well,
what
that
are
comes
you
back to
doing?
the monitoring and the tracking of what are you doing with it once you get it.
Absolutely.
And
that's
the need for
problem.
instructional coaches that can go in and actually make sure that what you were taught is now being implemented and being implemented in the right ways.
Absolutely.
So that's a
It's-
presence in the classroom.
It's more than getting a grab bag with some resource and you just put them in your closet. What are we doing for our students? Because time after time, every year, we don't want to get ready for testing, look at this screen and see the same schools still failing.
Right.
And we all say that, same schools. You know, before we even look, we can just, okay, I know who number 1 is gonna be. I know who number 10 is gonna be. It shouldn't be like that.
shouldn't.
Especially we have all this PD, we have all these positions, and our kids are the ones that are not performing. And that's not fair. And I hope all these great changes, I love it. You know, I'm an advocate for the district, but we're gonna have to do something about all this we're doing, and the results are yet the same. Because it's hurting the kids. And then we want to know why the kids are leaving. Sometimes that's the reason. Parents don't want their kids failing. So that's my only concern. Same people in the same position.
Well, I think we've put a lot of things in place that will continue to move that forward. I think you're going to see positive results.
I have faith that you all have done that.
We're going to do it, Dr.
Yes.
Copeland, to assure you of that. And to kind of piggyback on what everyone is saying, I don't fully understand the rationale behind the specificity of the job description for instructional coaches, because what I'm accustomed to is being all in, all hands on deck. So I'm accustomed to having instructional coaches, skill specialists who are prepared to go and model a lesson, teach a lesson if they have to, as well as work with teachers, because we have to build the leadership capacity of our teachers. And we have more and more teachers coming to us from ACP programs or from programs that they didn't get to student teach and they didn't get to have, you know, the pedagogy and all that. So it's important that we have people in the district, on the campuses, who could provide that job-embedded support. And I don't think specifying that they will not work with students, and I don't think I heard that, but making sure that we're all in. If I have to go teach a lesson, I was at AEC today, they said, oh, we ought to turn them loose. Turn them loose, I'm ready, come on. And we kind of laughed about it and talked with some kids and so on and so forth. And I think that's the direction we're moving. And again, as the year goes on, I understand the rationale behind diving so deep into the job descriptions, but the skill specialists that I've seen, they seem prepared to do some things. And so the ones that you know about, I probably haven't seen them, so.
Yes.
Right, really, the skill specialist, in my viewpoint, that should be the strongest instructional person you have on that campus.
Absolutely.
Because they're going to be right there with that teacher in the classroom, in planning, and in all those places.
And I would like to see skill specialists, and I'm just saying, you know, when people find out you're on the board, everybody, I don't know how much of it is true, because I'm not there, but when we have a vacancy that happened this year, skill specialists should not be afraid to get inside the classroom and teach until we can get a team. What y'all doing all day? Get in there and teach the students. We shouldn't have subs quitting every 2 or 3 days. We done went through 4 subs, and you sitting over there as the skill specialist doing what?
Yeah.
No, that's not going to happen any longer.
That is not.
As a matter of fact, I met with a skills specialist Friday afternoon who was a science skills specialist.
Yeah.
It's green. Can you not hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Science skills specialist who has in her department two vacancies, and we have
Rotating.
substitutes in those vacancies, but she is rotating from each of those classrooms
Those are
throughout
the
the
people
entire
understand.
day
Science
and
is strong.
teaching in both of those classrooms.
Happy to hear
And
that.
though if there is a vacancy, it is a requirement of the skills specialist to be working closely with those people.
That's what I thought.
Substitute or possibly teaching the class.
Right, or teaching.
Yes.
So when we say they're not working with students, and we can talk about this offline at a later date, this is the kind of conversation that evolves, because we know if they're instructional coaches, skills specialists working with teachers, you're working with students.
Right. That's exactly right. It might not be directly, but the reality is, I can tell you for the high school, that all of the skills specialists in some form or fashion are working directly with students. However, we did not want to tell a principal that they had to be specified a class. They had to be given a section, because that's really the way it would have to have been evaluated at the high school level. However, so again, it's giving flexibility to the principal, but they are all working with students directly.
And I'd like to clarify for elementary, we did go back and revise the job description for the skills specialist for elementary, and they do work with students. They do pull students, work with them, as well as support the teachers and try to build their capacity. They do the modeling, the training, and whatever they need to do. They're an integral part of the leadership team on the campus as far as instruction.
That's music to my ears. That's excellent. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Go ahead.
Okay. Are we ready? Thank you. If I could have you to turn to page 212, that is the next item on the consent agenda, and it is the monthly tax office refunds. And as you can see there, we have 2 refunds for this month. And then on page 213 is where we have the contracts and purchases over $50,000. But please note that I did upload a revised version of that same document, which is actually on page 386.
So we're going to 386.
Page 386, yes, ma'am. And again, these are contracts or services that an individual department is seeking, and they're going to be over 50,000. That the expense could be over 50,000, so we bring that to you all for approval. Are there any questions about the contracts and purchases over 50,000 that's listed on page 386?
Now, the numbers I'm looking at, are all of these in curriculum and instructions?
No, sir. If you look under department, so the first column is the contract or purchase order number, and then there's the next column has the department. So that's the department that is making the request, if you will. You see that, Mr. Mead?
I do.
And then the dollar amount and so forth.
I think what my question was, do we evaluate, maybe I asked this last time, do we evaluate this curriculum stuff? Do we evaluate the 209,000 curriculum and instruction, a reading and writing project? Is that something that we evaluate to see what results we get from it? From time to time, do we look at these to see if they're effective or not effective? And how do we do that?
I will tell you that we have had intense discussions about the plan for evaluating any type of program that the district is implementing to ensure that we are getting the desired results from those particular programs that we're paying for. Regarding this one you just specifically mentioned, if you see here, it is actually a new contract for this current school year. And I know Dr. Tomey, that falls under your area if you want to speak more specifically to it.
It's actually one of my approvals tonight, and that's the teacher college staff development piece. It's $209,000. But basically what they do is they're giving us 72 days of staff development where they work on 10 of our elementary campuses. It's all of the intermediates that are now elementaries, and then 4 of our pre-KK centers. And they provide staff development for the teachers. The people from Teacher College come down and provide all the sessions for us.
I've had a lot of teachers come up to tell me that they don't like Teacher College, and I don't know what they don't like about it, whether the curriculum or what, but they don't think it's effective for what they're doing.
You know, we've had a very serious discussion about that about 3 hours ago today, and we're really looking at it seriously. Lucy Calkins, who is the guru of it all, met with us this afternoon, just strictly Aldine. She came in from New York to talk about our concerns, and now we're really looking at how, what are we doing? What does implementation look like? What support are we giving our teachers? And if this really is something that we want to continue. But for this year, we need to provide that staff development.
And I totally agree with Dr. Tomey, but just to give you a little bit more feedback, and you'll hear about the first 3 months of my transition and the work that the research department is doing. The curriculum audit we've all gone over, and we have spent 2 intense days with Katie and Don looking at all of that information. In addition, from the curriculum audit, which also had lots of information about the Reading and Writing Project, Teachers College, we are going to have an outside. We're going to evaluate every program, but because we recognize the attachment or the pointing of fingers, we wanted to remove any internal components. So we're partnering with Sam Houston State University, the Dean of the College of Education, and she's going to lead an evaluation of the Teachers College. And so we're going to be working with them. Today, I did get an opportunity to meet with the founder, the owner from New York, and as you stated, Mr. Mead, there's some concerns, and then there's some strengths as well. And so we've got to look at what's best for Aldine students and how when we say we supplement, what that looks like. I've told everyone the one thing as I was preparing for this job, when they talk about the Aldine Way, we want to do the Aldine Way 2.0, where when we talk about what is the curriculum in Aldine, it's not subjective based on the leader. It is, we use Teachers College, but we recognize that we have to supplement with phonics, we have to do this, this, and that. So we're working on getting that information so that in the future, when you ask that question, we'll have the feedback. And it's going to be, we already have a head start. We have all the data. The questions have already been asked, and so they're going to pull those out, and they're going to also spend time with teachers, principals, and program directors, because right now, everybody's just pointing fingers and saying, I feel, I think, but no one's thinking about the child. And y'all know literacy, pre-K, and college access are our three main things that we need to focus on. So definitely.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right, any other questions about the over 50K?
Yes, I'm glad Mr. Mead said something, because I'm concerned about the Lucy Calkin, and I'm also concerned about the Houston A+ Challenge. And that was my question. Are these things really working for our students? So I'm glad you brought that up.
Some of them work for other kids, but not our kids.
As a whole, we need holistically. Because I see that's a new contract as well for $75,000.
Houston A Plus has been involved in middle school for the last 3-4 years or so. And the first couple of years they were here, we did a lot with assistant principals, skills specialists, and working with them on just being good instructional leaders. And I think it's been very effective. I think we're seeing a rise of the level of instruction. But they go into our classrooms, they work with language arts and with math. That's the two areas. I've done a lot of talking with principals and et cetera, and they feel it's very valuable. I think one of the most important things about Houston A+, and I had a conversation with the principal today, they've found a deficit that they need to work on. Will you call Houston A+, they're coming next week, and you tell them whatever you had planned, this is what I need. And that's one of the great things about having those partners that are close and that you work with a lot. Whatever you need, that's what they do. So it's a very flexible thing. They'll work with whatever it is we need, they will be happy to adjust and do that. So I think it's been a positive relationship. It's $75,000, but they're, like for $75,000, they're in every one of our middle schools with reading and writing. They'll probably visit all those schools, I believe it's 8 times during the year, plus they're giving several staff developments during the year. So that's pretty inexpensive for staff development and for monitoring classrooms.
So I wanted to add to that. I am actually looking at expanding that with 2 of the 9th grade centers. When I looked at the work, I sat with them and they explained to me the work that they were doing with the middle schools and directly working, as Mabel said, in building the capacity of assistant principals in content and process and skills specialists. And then we looked at the gains that happen in the middle school, and I do believe that there is a correlation between some of the academic gains. Every middle school met standard this year, and I think in large part that's because of increased capacity of the leaders in those buildings. And so, based on that evidence, I'm hoping to replicate some of those practices on a much smaller scale with 2 of our 9th grade centers. So it's not just a matter of they sound good, they have a good sale, they have a good pitch. Are there gains in student performance, and can we connect that work to the student performance? And I do believe we can.
That's what I'm looking for when I'm asking these questions. Not that they're not good programs, but are they doing the job that they need to do for us? And you're the one to come back and tell us. And it also shows up in the grades that we see with our kids. And that's what we're trying to see. There's no reason not to evaluate any program you have in any department you have from time to time to see if it's working or not, you know?
Right.
If a mechanic and he doesn't take care of your car like he should, you know, you're gonna evaluate what he's doing for the amount of money he's getting. You may wanna move to something else, okay?
And Mr. Mead, I hope to move in the future to where when we're making these recommendations, we're able to say, we've utilized this for X amount of years. We've had to tweak and be completely 100% honest and say we've had to tweak, but we've made significant progress in these areas and we hope to see more progress, or we're extremely proud of the progress or something, and not just bring you numbers with a bottom line, but numbers that show how long and the results over the years. That's what we hope to move towards.
Well, I like what Todd and Mabel said. You're seeing results from what you're getting. If it's working for you, you know, then we want to use it. If it's not working, we ought to look at something else.
Well, you know, we are really promoting that, and what we talk a lot, principal, about is that a principal cannot completely change a building. It's going to take a principal's team.
That's it.
But if the team isn't up to what they need to be, if they don't know good quality instruction and they can't get that across, then that principal is still kind of alone. And so we've really worked to grow that assistant principal team and those skill specialists. It takes everybody. And Houston A Plus has helped a lot on that. They do 3 to 4 walks a year where they take the APs and they go into classrooms and they walk. What'd you see? What was positive? What was negative? What would help here? What could you maybe try? Those kind of things. So that's been very beneficial.
Okay. If you'll now turn to page 217, and that is where we have the local investment policy. Each year, we are required to review the policy to ensure that it still reflects what our current practice is, and if we need to update or make any changes, we bring those recommended changes to you all. The finance team has reviewed the current investment policy, and we do not have any recommended changes at this time. Then on page 223, that is where I have before you for your approval 2 interlocal agreements, both with Harris County Department of Education for after-school programs at Drew Academy and at Raymond Academy. The first is a 21st Century grant program, and then the second is the CASE grant program. Again, the Drew Academy program is 21st Century, and then the Raymond Academy program is through CASE. But we are partnering with HCDE.
And it would actually start after it's approved. It says September 4th, 2018.
Yes,
So-
it starts after it has been approved by our board and their board.
Okay.
Yes.
And there's no matching for.
For the CASE grant, there is
but the
matching.
21st Century. there is not.
21st Century is fully funded. And the CASE grant is a little bit different because you have to already have an existing after-school program. And so CASE comes in and provides you some supplemental support with their funding, but the campus already has to have had some type of existing program. So at this campus, they have what we call a co-pay program. So parents pay a small amount for their child. That's how the campus raises their in-kind contribution for their child to participate in the after-school program, a nominal amount.
No district funds.
Yeah, no district funds. It's all supported by the campus.
How do we determine which schools get to do this? Well, how we just pick out one school randomly, or?
Oh, no, not random. It's a campus choice. When these grant opportunities are made available, it's usually a campus leadership team that will get together and decide that they want to apply. So it's campus initiated.
Okay, so they won the grant, okay.
Yes, they applied for the grant and then they were selected. That's correct.
That's good.
Any campuses we have that participate in the 21st Century?
For this upcoming year, we just have Drew. Now, last year, there was a 5-year grant where it included some other campuses, but it ended in the 17-18 school year. So it was like Francis, Goodman, they were in a 5-year grant cycle. But those same campuses were not awarded for this new grant
But the
cycle.
YMCA was awarded the 21st Century grant, right? I think they were. And some of them service our kids.
Absolutely. So there are other agencies that can apply for these programs, this funding as well, and then they'll come in and implement the program, these after-school programs at our schools. So I know Johnson used to have a program through the YMCA as well.
And we want to get these programs into our most needed schools, right? The ones that are the weakest that need the most help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But again, it's those opportunities come down the pipeline and campuses can decide to apply if they,
Grant application.
okay? All right, that completes everything that's on my consent agenda. As you all know, this month we will be, I'll be bringing forth the tax rate. And so we did the proposed budget and the proposed tax rate back in June. And so now that we have our certified values, I will be presenting tomorrow for you all to vote on and approve our official tax rate. So it's still the proposed amount that I shared back in June, which is the $1.43. Okay, so we'll have that as an action item. And then on page 273, these are just items that are on my monthly report, discussion items, and the first one is the monthly tax office report. So starting next month, we will be able to populate the missing numbers or the values that are on the top of the report, because we'll have our official certified values in for next month. But as you can see, just one item to note that we're still monitoring those refunds, and as you can see, we're already at 1.9 million in refunds for the 2018 year. So monitoring that carefully.
Dr. Alfred Stevens,
Yes,
are
ma'am.
we anticipating with the preliminary information that you have about our appraisals, are you anticipating that we would see the same thing for this coming year or not?
Yes.
We are?
I would think that the number of protests for the 2018 tax year will be a little bit higher
Oh, wow.
than normal. You know, of course, as a direct impact of the storm, of course. But yes, to answer your question, we do anticipate, you know, even more protests. And then if you look on the next page, which is page 274, you'll see the monthly revenue status report. And if you look at the FY18, which is the year that we are currently getting ready to be audited on, our auditors will be here next week for the next 2 weeks, actually, starting on Monday, to close out FY18. And so, as I told you last month, the goal was to have some budget savings. So we were projected to use about 40 million of our fund balance, but because we did not spend our budget at 100%, then of course any unused budget rolls back into the fund balance, if you will. So it's funds that we did not spend. So if you look there, we spent just about 609 million of the $622 million budget. There are still some minor adjustments that have to be made, but overall we spent about 97, a little bit under 98% of the budget, which equates to just a little bit more than $12 million in savings, which is of course favorable for us.
I just have a question about that page. When I look at the percent of the budget that's already expended for this year.
For FY19.
19, yes. So there are 4 categories, or 5 maybe, that are already, I mean, we're into the first month of the year, month and a half maybe. And already there are 5 categories that are at 20% or higher in the percentage of their budget that they've already expended.
Sure.
I'm just curious to know why we have we have the largest at 32% already, a third of the budget already. And community services at 38%. Are there reasons why?
Well, it could be a myriad of reasons. To address the community services one, where you see that budget amount is, of course, only just under, $600,000 or so. And so sometimes when there are projects or programs that are planned at the first beginning part of the school year, and you've already had that to take place, and then so those expenses have already occurred, and then you won't have that expense again for the remainder of the year. But Dr. Garcia, without looking specifically at all of the different departments that have a budget in Function 61, I wouldn't be able to specifically speak to that, but I will tell you that those percentages, of course, are going to fluctuate, and then Again, your budget is your proposed plan of how you're going to spend your funds. But as the year progresses, if you see that, oh, I don't have enough in function, 11 in my budget, or I don't have enough in function 61, but I have too much in function 41, you submit your request to move budget from one function to the other. So it may be that as these departments are spending these funds, they see that, oh, we need to shuffle money around, and we'll do that, of course, during this formal process. So it could be that that percent could be different, in the next few months because the budget moves up or down or what have you.
Right, so there were functions 21, 23, 32, and 61 that seemed
Functions.
high for this time. 21,
At
23,
this-
32, and 61.
Yes, yes. And I will also tell you that once we have prepared the budget, it's my team's responsibility to go through those functions each month to make certain everything is accurately accounted for. So that's why each month you'll see that we have to make adjustments, just as I just stated with the skill specialist, because that budget is not in the appropriate place. So there are adjustments that are going to take place all throughout the year to make certain that we have everything coded correctly, so that it will not appear as though we've spent 25% of the budget in the first 2 months of school. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. And then if you look on page 280, that is again, just another standard report. It is our monthly investment report. And of course, we sold that $148 million in bonds, so we're getting some interest earnings on some of that. And this month's portfolio shows that we have about just over $600,000 in interest earnings there.
Could you go back to 278 and 279?
Absolutely.
And
278, okay, that's debt service. Yes,
right.
ma'am.
So the debt service there's a deficit, 3.8 million.
Okay, so that's,
indicated.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the deficit there. at
Yes,
the
there's a
bottom.
deficit there for FY19 because we have not we have not received all of our state funding yet for FY19. So we get paid each month, not each month, we're on payment cycle 2. So it's because our state funding hasn't come in. That's why it appears to be a deficit there. Because you can see we've only gotten 17 million in revenue in. You see that?
Yes, but I mean, isn't the category debt service? So is debt service not related to our bond? Is debt service, am I reading that wrong?
No, debt service is our bond payment. For FY19, we're going to be paying $65 million as our bond payment this year. So at the end of the 18-19 school year, we will have paid $65.7 million for our bond payments. But
So
you're seeing that, you see where it says deficiency, that 3.8?
Yes.
That's the piece that you're speaking of, right?
Yes, exactly.
And that's because we have not gotten in all of our revenue yet to absorb that deficiency.
So we have state funding for debt service?
We get EDA, we get an
Okay,
existing
okay,
debt
all right,
allotment.
good, good.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And then the next page is our child nutrition services, right? Debt
Yes,
service.
ma'am.
And they have a debt service because,
Again, that the revenue streams have not started coming in yet. So once you see where it says actuals, once those revenue streams start coming in, once we start getting those reimbursements, there will not be a deficit in child nutrition. If you look at FY18, they're ending the year with a surplus of $4.7 million. So it's just because, remember, we create the expense first and then we get reimbursed. So the revenue is not there yet. The actual revenue, just the budget is there. Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome. And if there are no additional questions, that completes, Mr. Mead, my agenda.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
My agenda begins on page 282, and it's very brief. I have 3 of my routine items, each have 1 case each, where we're going to ask your permission to release judgment liens or abstract judgments and partial releases. Any questions about those? If not, I have 2 matters to discuss in executive session.
Okay, thank you. Abel, you ready?
Yes.
Mr. Reed, members of the board. My agenda begins on page 286 and 287. On page 287, you will find the calendar of events for you to review. And we'll be making adjustments to send you all more notification on that. Just two of special note is October 4th. We have the Meade Middle School dedication, and October 7th, the Vardaman dedication. So make sure that's on your calendars, please. Are there any questions about the calendars? If not, then on page 406, you will find calendar events, and on page 407 through 417, I'm sorry, you will find the calendar events by schools. So you have high school to middle school and elementaries by region. So you can review their calendars as well. Let me get to that page. Next, on page 421 and 423 is our social media report highlighting those stories with the most reach. I think y'all are familiar with that format already for you to review. And on page 424 to 430, you will find the news releases for the month. Finally, on page 431 through 439, you will find some of these stories that were published in the past month. And there is a particular special story on page 438 for you to review. You may recognize that person on there. On page 438, she celebrated her birthday today. So, any questions? If not, then that concludes my brief report.
Okay. And Dr. Goffney is going to handle Ken's report tonight.
Very thankful for our hardworking executive leadership team. I think when we talked about the mantra this year of all in, they didn't realize what that actually meant. So we'll be, several of them will be sharing because we've all been in consideration of Ken's absence, and we certainly ask that you continue to keep him in your thoughts and prayers. Number one will be conducted Dr. Alfred Stevens. She's done the background. Number two, we're going to ask respectfully that we remove that one. We need some additional information, as well as that we give us Dr. Alfred Stevens and the rest of the team an opportunity to look a little bit more closely. I know we had some beginning conversations last month, but we just have more questions. Right. So we'll take care of that. And then Dr. Alfred Stevens will also go over number three.
Yes. And so if you look on page 289, and that's where we have the first item. Last month, Mr. Knipple shared that we would be partnering with Consistency Management and Cooperative Discipline, CMCD, to provide some student behavior improvements, coaching, and support for teachers at various campuses. We actually have 9 campuses that we'll be contracting and using these services for. And so we need the board's approval, if you will, for this particular agreement. And then on page 300, which is the third item that we're asking your approval of, that is the Harris County Public Health Interlocal Agreement. And are there any questions about that particular agreement? It just states that in the event if there's a public emergency, just as Harvey, we were allowed to use MOC as a shelter in the event that there's an emergency, would be able to do something such as that. So again, just being proactive, it's hurricane season, anything can happen, and wanting to make certain we have these partnerships in place in the event of something such as that. Are there any questions about any of those two?
Board? No questions.
Thank you.
Okay, the next two, the district police activity report and the monthly discipline report. Dr. Davis.
So these are standard reports on Ken's or Mr. Knipple's agenda each month. Are there any questions regarding the police activity report or the monthly discipline report?
Page that on Ken.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is on 306 and 307. 306 is the beginning of the police activity report, which is actually on 307. And the discipline report is on 309, I believe. Are there any questions regarding these two reports?
No questions?
Okay, the last thing on Mr. Knippel's agenda is the student enrollment report, and that, I believe, is on page 317. Report shows that we are very close to our projected enrollment, 588 off from where we were projected. Are there any questions regarding the enrollment?
Not there, but I'd like to say thank you to the superintendent for the report that she's given the board where we know exactly what each school has. I think that's a good report that you put out to let us know what's happening on sort of a daily basis or monthly basis where we don't have to have questions on it. So I think it's a good report.
Student Services does an awesome job, but I would love for you to hear from a financial standpoint.
Right, just as an extension to what Dr. Davis has said, is my mic not on? Can y'all hear me? As an extension to what Dr. Davis has said, this report that you see here now was as of September 5th. And then we received another update on September 12th, I believe, which was last Wednesday.
It's in the addendum.
And y'all got that one too, in the addendum. Great, so you can see that we were just under 100 kids, the difference between last year's enrollment at the time and this current year's enrollment, which is, of course, a better situation for us. Also, please take into consideration that as we were planning and budgeting for this 18-19 school year, that we projected and planned and budgeted for having less kids. And so correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Chopra, about 65,523, did I get it right? And so what we planned for, we are actually exceeding the enrollment projections based on those planned amounts, which, did y'all catch that?
Yes.
Okay, so which puts us in a better position financially and particularly, right? And so, and just, doing some basic numbers, the lowest level of basic that I could, calculate real quickly, if we're down about 100 kids, we get about $5,700 per kid. So what, that's a little bit more than $500,000, about $570,000 or so. So that's better than being down, 588 kids or more and being off 3.3 million or 4 million, where the state sends us too much money because we don't have the enrollment to support that. So kudos to the team, to everyone in this room for helping us to project and budget and work through that tenuous process so that we would not over staff, if you will, for this the current school year that we're in. And of course, we are continuing to monitor the enrollment because we know that is a significant driver to our state funding. So, but the kids that we have here, they need to come to school. So it's average daily attendance coupled with enrollment that drives our funding. So we have to make sure that message is out there and shared as well.
Did we have a walk for the students, dropout walk? Did we have that in the district? No, we don't do that.
We have not had that.
Aldine had ever done it.
We've done it previously.
We used to do it.
Several years. Used to do it, and maybe
We've done it
something.
One Saturday, so I was wondering if we did it. You go look for your kids that
You
did not
knock on
show
the
up
door.
for the school year. And we were out there Saturday.
Oh, my gosh.
There are lists produced of those kids that were expected that didn't arrive. So it's very well organized. But my question is about the report. So in the regular report, we have on the 5th, and then in the addendum, we have the 12th, and today's the 17th. How frequently do you
She sends
get
them
these?
every Wednesday, and I'm sending them to you every Friday. So the same one, she'll send it Wednesday, and you'll receive it on Friday.
Right.
Just with the weekly update, so you're not receiving so many emails.
Right.
Yes.
Do we have any results on the campaign in the sense we were trying to bring people from outside of open enrollment?
I do not have that data, but we can certainly get
Space
that.
availability.
And also about the program we did at all the pre-K schools advertising. Do we know how that helped out at all? Can we tell, or is it?
I will tell you that if you look at the enrollment report that's listed here, you can see where we have enrollment gains, if you will, and where we are experiencing some enrollment challenges. And if you look at the top of the report, the very top section, it has the breakdown by grade level. It starts at EE and it goes all the way up to grade 12. And so if you can look at, can everybody see where I
But
am?
are we looking, let's look at the one in the addendum. I can't find the page number because this is, we want to look at the
The most recent one,
912.
absolutely.
So has anybody found the 912
Let's
in the
see,
addendum?
in the addendum,
317, is that? No?
Who put it in their report?
No, it's three
It's on
fifty-six.
page 356.
Okay,
356.
Because I
Thank
had,
you.
I had seen that as well, Mr. Mead, and it's the K, first, second, and third that are down.
Right, so, and as you can see, overall in EE through K, I mean, it's 39, it nets to a negative 39 kiddos that were down. But primarily in the PK, you see where our projections are 81 kids higher, our enrollment is 81 kids higher than what we had planned for. But at the kinder sector is where we're down about 113 kids. Do you see that, Mr. Mead?
Yes,
Okay, and then if you look across grades 1 through 5, you can see that in grades first, second, and third particularly,
250, 244, 470.
right, the 470 is where we're down in third grade, but then look in fourth and fifth, it's picking up in fourth and fifth, and then of course when you get to sixth and seventh, it's up, which is great news. A little bit down in eighth grade, and then, but look at those high school numbers, they're bursting. Okay, so it tells us where we need to target our attention and where we need to focus, which is where we're seeing our declining enrollment. And of course, we want our kids to start here and end here, right? We know that that's important. So that's where we will have a concentrated focus on bringing our kids back, kids that have left, and having opportunities for them to come back. And of course, expanding options and choices for our kiddos and families.
Yes, and going back to my question
Yes,
about the
ma'am.
walk, maybe that's something we can look back into if it's beneficial.
Who
That's why I brought it
organized the
up.
walk back in the day? What department? And when was the last
I
walk?
believe it was the counseling department.
It was, yes.
Okay.
I believe it was the counseling department. I'll make a note of it and see what we need to do to reinstate that, to consider discussions to reinstate that.
I think
Absolutely.
it's
We have
been
to do it
2
before
years
October.
since we did it.
It's been 2 years.
But they still meet, like on a Saturday, and they'll make phone calls and contact those kids. But we ran into some situations knocking on doors. And I think that's why they stopped.
But it was also a more coordinated effort that included multiple school districts.
Yes.
At the same time, so it was, okay.
Right, no, but
D did it it was the same Saturday, so
Right.
HISD, Spring, everyone was doing it on the same Saturday.
Right.
And so everyone knew, we wore badges, everyone knew, so it was a little safer at the time because everyone knew we were out there. And so if someone was knocking at your door, it was
We had door
most likely
hangers.
someone
We had door
from
hangers we
a
used
school.
as well, yeah.
Right.
Timing would have to be perfect, because I would hate to show up. But one thing I know for sure is there's somebody working on it, because I received emails from our attendance officer who's reclaimed, and I'll share that email with you all. Kiddos that'll make you cry. I mean, he sent one this past weekend where he went to the house. So we have people who are making home visits.
Right.
We're just not flashing it anywhere.
Right.
I think it's counselors and attendance office, but I'll get some information for you.
in many cases it was very effective because the schools were open. This was on a Saturday, and the schools were open, ready to receive the kids. So we would encourage them, as we encountered them, to go to the school that very day to register the kids, or to get them right back in that day.
Well, I love
And then
it.
there was a follow-up. Of course, we had the list from each school, and so we kind of targeted ourselves and went to a particular location and region identified by the school with addresses and all the information, and reported it back to the school so the school would be able to follow up.
So it may be too late this year, but we'll make a note for next year, and I'll bring it up at a Region 4 superintendent's meeting to see if that was something they did just for that time period. But if not, Dr. Watson and I definitely have a very respectful relationship, and we can partner, and then we'll go ahead and put it on the agenda for our attendance office, student services, and counseling department for next year for sure.
It was very successful. We didn't run into any problems. We went as a team, and we actually found some students that wanted to come back to school.
Exactly.
So we were excited. They were too.
Think about it, though, the charter schools are doing it, and the
Oh, all
private
the time.
schools, they're out there.
They are. That's true.
I do have one question. Todd, you might be able to help me on this one. I thought when we started our, the Blanchton CTE, that was gonna be 1,500 kids. And I'm just looking here at 1,018, and this was something that was a lottery.
I thought it was gonna be
Did
1,200.
people just not apply for it?
The goal was 1,200 for this year, right? And the recruitment efforts are still ongoing. There were a few of the strands that did not attract as they had hoped for, but the reaching the goal of 1,500 is not a concern as we garner the word of the successes of Blanson High School, but the recruitment effort is still ongoing.
Well, that's not giving us any more outside kids. That's our internal kids anyway that's gonna go there, so.
But that's
I'm
something
just
we need,
wondering, you know, why.
and as we learn and grow and go through this year, that's something we need to consider, because it's an opportunity to attract strong kids from other districts who, once our students have made their decision, which would add to and not pull away from the other campuses, because it's not gonna do us any good if we go out and take 200 kids from the 5 comprehensive high schools and send them to Blanton.
Right.
Right.
However, if we got 200 kids from outside, or 200 of the 3,000 who have selected other choices. So those are the things that we're gonna be intentional about.
Right. Primarily, those 3,000, the 3,000 Aldine students who are at charter campuses we really want to focus on getting those students and pulling them back in. And we do have some. Now, I need to get the exact numbers for you, but Mr. Ibarra has done a report for us that showed us the number of students that Blanton was able to recoup that are Aldine students going to other schools. Right.
That's good.
Yeah, since we are talking about the career and technical education campus, there was a question someone posed to me. Are the kids that are in the EMT program able to be certified? There was a question about there not being that opportunity for them currently because of lack of certification by the instructor or certified hours, or
Correct.
is there a question?
The EMT program needs to partner with an outside organization. Typically, that was with Lone Star. Lone Star did require a certain level of certification of the instructor.
Okay.
The instructor is working on that certification. In the meantime, we are looking at partnering with another organization, and I want to say it's Harris County, HCC, who does not have that same level of certification. We are working diligently, and I don't want to, never want to make any assurances, but our goal is to make sure that no student has a missed opportunity in terms of certification. We have a teacher at MacArthur High School who is fully certified and that could assist us if we need to go that route. We will certainly explore all opportunities. But we do not want to deprive any student that opportunity to be certified.
But currently, are they in jeopardy of not being certified?
No, they're not. They are taking the courses that they need. It's not a matter of taking the courses or being prepared. It's a matter of the credentials of the instructor when that time comes. So when that time comes, we're going to make sure that we have either the credentials in place, a different partnership, or we bring in someone who does have the credentials.
But we have the time to do that for
We
them
do,
to
we
have
do.
been certified.
But there is a sense of urgency. We discussed it Friday. We have another meeting tomorrow to look at the status. As I talked with Franklin Higgins on Friday, that I want a decision by the end of the week on what our plan is.
So did we hire someone that was not certified?
No, he was certified to teach the class. With the plan to get him prepared, and get the certification in place.
But we didn't understand Lone Star's expectation, or what was the challenge then?
Well, the challenge was actually getting finding the person with that certification in place was the challenge. We hired a person who was willing to get credentialed and hopefully get that taken care of within the timeline to allow students to be certified.
Okay, and so the other question, kind of related, is that I know that we have, I forget the number of certification fields at Blanton. So are we evaluating, and I know that some of those areas were in higher demand than others, and so those spots filled very quickly. Did we take the opportunity to understand that those are high sought-after fields? Are we looking at the opportunity for other kids at the comprehensive high schools to have that type of program? In other words, if we can't meet the need at Blanton, are we looking, if we didn't already have those programs at the comprehensive high schools, are we looking at the possibility of expanding to those schools, EMT, for example.
Certainly.
If we had a high number of EMT kids at Blanson, do we have that opportunity for the rest of the kids at the comprehensive high schools?
Well, number one, each program will be evaluated on a year-to-year basis, and each program will be evaluated in coordination to the economic demands, the corporate demands, the industry demands of those positions. If industry demands are increasing and at the same time student interest is there, I think it would be our responsibility to look at expanding the program. Many of the programs at Blanson High School are offered at the traditional high schools. The difference in the programs that are offered at both is that Blanson provides additional opportunities. For instance, the auto tech is provided at all of our high schools. However, Blanson provides the diesel extension to that. And so there are very few that EMT is one and the HVAC is another that are not offered at the traditional campuses. And again, based on numbers of interest.
But we'll continue to evaluate.
Yes,
See
absolutely.
whatever-
Yeah, like I said, I think it's our responsibility on a yearly basis to make sure that if the industry demands are there, number one,
Right.
and then again, if the student interest is there, to expand.
Right, yeah, because it just seems like that because it is such a specialized program, we of course understand that some of those programs are additional cost to the district. We have to
Right.
have the specific equipment and all of that. But if the kids, because it's sort of you win and you lose for the kids because they are selecting to go to a school that is not comprehensive in the sense that they don't have the extracurricular activities and all the other things that they might want from a comprehensive high school. And so for some kids, it's the pull, it's the tug of, do I really want to go there and pursue this interest? And if I had that choice at my high school, would I go to Blanson? Would I stay at my high school? Given, the opportunities for the other things. So, well, good. I'm glad we're going to continue to evaluate to see.
Right.
Are we spotlighting CTE one of the months? If not, we could have a workshop. Ms. Holt? I think so, because those are good questions that we could.
Well, we had it must have been in April or so that. Right. I think they did the program in April. Was it April? The principal, to highlight the programs and the activities that were going to take place there.
That'd be good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Got all of Ken's
Yes,
programs?
That's all.
yes.
For me?
Ready for you.
Good evening, President Mead, Dr. Goffney, Dr. Chapa. It's a pleasure to say that. My agenda begins on page 319, and I have two consent agenda items for you. The first one you'll find on page 320, and that is the approval of the Teacher College Reading Writing Project contract. That's our staff development contract for $209,000. Provides 72 days of on-site staff development on a variety of campuses. Do you have any additional questions about that?
Questions?
My second approval is found on page 340, and it is the budget approval for Avance Houston to provide Head Start services from January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2019. So this is next year's budget for Head Start. Just a reminder that we have 540 eligible pre-K students and their families at De Santiago, Keble, Hinojosa, and Vines. Do you have any questions about the budget?
Sarah, I just want to make sure I'm reading it correctly. So I'm looking at page 340.
Okay.
So Aldine's portion of the total cost is that non-federal share match. Is that right? Am I right?
That is correct.
Okay, I just want to.
And that includes things like transportation, the building, that type of things, utilities.
So some of that is in kind.
It's in kind.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all in kind.
Oh, it's all in kind. Okay, great.
Other questions? The final thing is under discussion, page 346. It gives you the SHAC, which is the School Health Advisory Committee meeting dates. And so these are the dates that the SHAC meetings will be held. Just again, a reminder, over 50% of the members need to be
non-employee parents in the district?
I
Questions?
will say that I have attended these, and not as frequently in the last couple of years, but I do encourage the board members to attend because this is the School Health Advisory Council and child nutrition, the nursing
The
group,
nurse,
the
PE.
health, physical education, and all of those come together, and the interest from the parents is really quite exciting. Because of course they're interested in the effect that all of the combined services has to benefit their children. And so it's really nice to go, if you can go to one of their meetings.
I agree.
And you generally have somebody to speak on a specific health-related topic. And
Yeah, somebody will come in from the health department and talk about something of interest.
Maybe that's something Yolanda can keep us abreast on when the meetings are.
They're only 4 a year.
There's 4.
We can't do the first one because we're in Austin, I think, on that date, but maybe some other dates.
Okay. If you have no questions, that concludes my agenda.
Thanks, Sarah. Who's handling the area superintendent tonight?
I am. Good evening again. On discussion, we have, again, we have the report on the campus enrollment, and we have thoroughly gone over the enrollment. Does anyone have a question about the enrollment again?
No.
Yours is easy. Okay. Under presentation, we will hear from the history fair tomorrow. We have the program tomorrow night. And that's it for the SAS. Any questions?
We do have a MOU under our agenda for Project Grad. It's under approval. I believe that's on our agenda. On page 349. This is a data sharing agreement with a partnership that we have with Project Grad, which is a nonprofit group that works with Aldine High School and Aldine Ninth Grade Center. Are there any questions regarding that MOU?
Thank you.
Well, if that is all, then we will adjourn into executive session under sections 551071, consultation with attorney, section 551.074, personnel matters, section 551072, real estate, section 551076, security personnel devices, and section 551.082, due to disciplinary matter, if any, under the Open Meetings Act. It is now 8:37.